This is what the Lord says: Stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls.
Hello again, friends. Today I want to follow up on something that I said at the end of my last talk when I mentioned that Jesus is a good shepherd. This is a conversation I've had with quite a few people recently, and it's been very helpful to me and I believe to others, and hopefully it'll be helpful to you. Let's look at John chapter 10. I'll read some of what Jesus says there in John chapter 10. Jesus says, "I tell you the truth, the man who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way, is a thief and a robber. The man who enters by the gate is the shepherd of his sheep. The watchman opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice. He calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. But when he has brought out all of his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice." Verse 6 says, Jesus used this figure of speech, but they did not understand what he was telling them. Therefore Jesus said again, "I tell you the truth, I am the gate for the sheep. All who ever came before me were thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. He will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." Other translations would say, have life abundantly, have abundant life. Verse 11, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand is not the shepherd who owns the sheep. So when he sees the wolf coming, he abandons the sheep and runs away. Then the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. The man runs away because he's a hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay my life down for the sheep." So I just want to point out a few things here that have been very helpful as I've spoken to people in challenging situations. The first thing that I want to point out is that the shepherd calls his sheep by name. Jesus calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them. And this is very important because we can feel like sometimes that we're lost, unable to tell the right path. And if we think of God as being far off and, speaking generally to groups of people, then we won't even have the expectation that he would call us by name. Jesus, the Good Shepherd, will call you by name. He will call your name. You specifically. Each individual will be called by the shepherd. This is so very important because we need to listen for that shepherd's voice and know that he has something very specific for each of us. He'll call us by name. He knows us and he leads us as a part of the group, but also as individuals. He knows you very, very well. Another thing that I'll point out here quickly is that the sheep follow his voice. They know his voice. And they run from a stranger's voice. So sheep, we must learn by abiding in him to know his voice and to know the difference between his voice and a stranger's voice. We will hear other voices as we go through our lives. There are deceivers, there are liars, there are people who will try to draw us away from the things of God. And we'll hear those voices, but we should not follow those voices. Just not even recognize them as a leader. The sheep know his voice, and they run from the stranger's voice. So let's be that way. Really listen for the voice of the shepherd, confident that he will call you by name, and run away from any stranger's voice that leads us off of the true path. Now, the next thing has been so very helpful to me. It's when Jesus refers to himself as a good shepherd. When I was a young believer, long ago, I only thought of this word good as meaning he was a good person. Jesus is a good person who is a shepherd. He's a good shepherd. He's not a bad shepherd. He's a good shepherd. He's a good person who is a shepherd. But also now I understand this word good to mean that he is skillful. He is good at shepherding. He's a really good shepherd. He knows how to shepherd the flock. He knows how to save the lost. He's very, very good at it. He's a skillful shepherd. If we go through something really difficult, my understanding now is that Jesus has helped many, many people go through similar things. He's helped many people go through a similar path. He's a really good shepherd. He knows the very best way through the difficulties, through the hardships, or even if there's a life decision to be made. It's not a hardship or a difficulty, but it's a crossroads in life. He is a really good shepherd. He's very good at it. And we should listen for his voice because he's good. He's a really good shepherd, and he knows that right way. In Psalm 23, there's the image of going through the valley of the shadow of death. It's shadowy sometimes and dark, and we can't see the path. We need to hear that shepherd's voice and follow. And he'll call us by name and say, "This way." He'll say to me, "Mike, this is the way." And a little later on in one of my talks, I'll discuss and share specifically a situation where I realized that I really needed to have a shepherd to get through something difficult. And he spoke. He guided me by his Spirit. So let's remember, he is a very good shepherd. He is not surprised by the challenges that we face. He has helped millions of other people go through similar circumstances. And we just have to trust him, surrender. And this is another thing here that we come to the final point that I want to bring up right now is that Jesus says he lays down his life for the sheep. He is not selfish, and he's not prideful. He's not trying to show off or exert his authority or dominate or domineer. He's not that way. He actually lays down his life for the sheep. He surrenders his life. He sets that model for us that we should do the same for anyone who is under our authority or our influence. We should lay our lives down. And the reason we say that is because this is what Jesus does. He says in verse 14 of John chapter 10, "I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me, just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep." It's beautiful to have a leader who is selfless. He's so loving that he sees the only way we'll ever move from where we are, which is lost, into his kingdom and his light is for him to lay down his life. He has to set aside himself so that he can lead us. That's how he shows his love for us. So, if you're going through something difficult, or if you know somebody who's going through something difficult or confusing, or they have a life decision that's ahead of them, remind them, be reminded that Jesus is a very good shepherd. He's very good at it. And if we'll just listen for his voice, the shepherd's voice, and follow him, abide with him and follow him, follow his leadership, then he will lead us through the dark valleys into the green pastures and the still waters. So, until the next time, may the Lord richly bless you. May you always hear his voice and follow.
Jesus said to his disciples, "Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." Thank you for listening, and God bless you all.